morning. Good morning. It is April the 8th. I am Tanya Brooks, your community FBA folk herbalist, and I am live this morning because I could not go live on yesterday. I don't know what happened, but I was supposed to go live last night at 9 p.m. And so I'm doing it today, like nothing uploaded or what have you. So I just recently sent the link to my Facebook, and by all means, if you would like to join me, I hope some people will pop on and join me. So let me just make sure I'm doing all what I need to do here. So this morning, I'm talking about trauma and how it travels and how it will become pain that turns into stuck energy. All right. But with responsibility for self and with wellness, we can be healed from that. So, as always, I will definitely use myself as an example and how trauma traveled in my life. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started. But trauma, what does it look like? There's all different types of trauma, but it is what it is. You know, trauma, you can experience trauma usually from the physical aspect, something that has happened to you. You can experience trauma from what you've seen, what you've heard, and mentally, you're traumatized from all those different elements of trauma or all those different types of trauma, right? And trauma takes place when we are children, and it will continually travel throughout your young adult life and unfortunately into your adult life if it is not broken. And it can be only broken with responsibility of self and with wellness. So I'm going to talk about how I experienced trauma. What were the things that happened in my life that I experienced trauma? You guys also, forewarned is forewarned. You may hear my dog barking because I'm getting some work done in the home, and the people that are doing the work are coming in and out. So my dog may start barking because he's in a crate. But that's what that'll be. So for me, I experienced trauma at the age I didn't acknowledge it. It started for me at the age of 6, and it lasted until I was 12. So from 6 to 12, we know is 6 years. So for 6 years, I experienced trauma, and that was in the form of in our home where my father was physically abusive to my mother. He was emotionally abusive to my mother. Mentally abusive to my mother. All right. And my brother and I being in the household, we were traumatized. You know, I can't speak for my brother, but I know he was traumatized. I can only speak for myself. Seeing my mother physically abused, seeing how it affected her emotionally and mentally as well. I was traumatized. The way it looked for me, seeing it would be my dad would be out on the weekend throughout the whole entire weekend, popping in and out for a change of clothing. And then he would come home late Sunday night, early Monday morning. And of course, he was out doing things, you know, against the marriage. And I'm not going to get all into detail, but you guys can read between the line. And so they would get into first a verbal, this was like clockwork. And they would get into a verbal confrontation first, and then into a physical confrontation. Now, mind you, my parents at this point, my parents had been married. They got married when I was born. They weren't married for my brother's first 5.5 years. So at this point, they had been married for, I'm going to say 5 years or 6 years, because I was 6. They had been married for 6 years, and I don't remember any of the physical abuse that took place prior to the age of 6. And I remember it vividly. I was 6 years old. I had just turned 6 because we were moving from one town to another town, and I remember the first time it took place. So trauma traveled with me for 6 years. And what were the effects on my energy? How it turned into pain, and how I became stuck. I became stuck with anger, resentment, feeling unprotected, because the person that was supposed to be protecting me and my mother and my brother was physically abusing my mother. So I had to deal with feeling unprotected and feeling and having issues of trust, because my father through these years, I remember my father specifically telling me after one major ordeal where he actually took the phone off the wall, because back then, we had landlines. I remember my mother confronting him as he came in the kitchen, and I was standing in the living room, and I remember him taking the phone handle off the wall and whacking her across the face in the mouth, because she was going to call the police. And I remember seeing that. So now I'm dealing with, I was scared. I was scared. So I'm dealing with the physical aspect. There's pain there. There's major trust issues. This man that I'm supposed to be able to trust, because he's supposed to be my protector, is not in that vein anymore. And so with all of that, I became stuck. My energy became stuck now at the age of 10. I became stuck at a 10-year-old. And all of the pain and all of the different aspects of the trauma bottled up in me. And I became stuck. And the reason why I'm saying I became stuck is because now let's move fast forward to me being a young woman in my early 20s. And I am in my first real relationship with a man. But, realistically, I'm 21, 22 years old, but that 10-year-old girl, that stuck energy, that arrested development is there in this 21-year-old's body. And so I am reacting and having relationship out of that 10-year-old's stuck energy. That's the traveling of trauma that I've never dealt with. And the thing about trauma is it makes you become a master manipulator. As a young girl, I became a master manipulator. And another word for manipulator is a liar. I became a great liar. Because as a young girl, the expectation after my parents had just fought And after the police had just left our home at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, that Monday morning, my mother was to get me up, make breakfast for me. I was to get dressed and I was to go to school as if none of this trauma took place. None of this family form of insanity took place. So when you are dealing with a manipulator, as I was, you're dealing with a liar. And so, and those that are watching this, know that if you are a great manipulator, usually you've experienced trauma and pain and anger. And if you are a manipulator, you are a great liar. Because I was. Because you have to manipulate the reality of what is really, or what has really gone on, and lie and put on this facade as if it did not go on, and go through your day as if it's great. So if you are a manipulator like I was, you are a great liar. And that's nothing to be ashamed of, because that is the built up and the stuck energy of pain, manipulation, rejection, anger. And I'm going to talk about a little bit later of how being a woman, a mother, being a man or father, how that traveling trauma can carry on, and what you can do to your child if you have not dealt with that trauma, that traveling trauma. Okay? So those are the things that went on with me. And I was a great liar. I could lie and manipulate the situation so good. I believed it myself. So of course, if I'm manipulating the other individual, or the job, the person I'm in a relationship with, a friend, a family member, I believed it. So it was easy for them to know no different. I was a great liar, great manipulator. So the responsibility part, and how at some point, and for myself, I was in my late 20s when I said, you know what? I'm done. I was now in my second real relationship, and the common denominator was me. It wasn't the two men that I had been in a relationship with. It was me. It was my trauma, my traveling trauma. It was my pain that I was operating from. And I was tired of being the great manipulator. I was tired of that trauma still having control and running my soul. So I reached out. Now we're talking about the responsibility part and the wellness, and how these two things can heal. You can be healed from the trauma, from the pain, from the built up energy. I reached out. I got therapy. And the thing is, I had suppressed so much of that trauma that as I spoke to the therapist that I had at the time, great FBA woman, Foundational Black American woman, here in Connecticut. She no longer is here, but she great. As I spoke to her and I took responsibility for my ending of the two relationships that I had been in, from really from 19 to 28, because actually at 19 I got married. It was my first marriage. I got married when I was 19. You know, this 10-year-old stuck, traumatized girl got married at 19. That traveling trauma. So anyhow, I spoke to this great therapist, and let me say too, when you take on responsibility and you reach out and you get the help from the therapist, it is, I think, imperative that you are able to speak with someone that looks like you, that is of your same sex. They have to be able to, or you need to be able to see, I know at least for me, that they can relate to what I'm talking about. I think that's important. So I took the responsibility and I got the help that I needed. And I also went on this wellness journey at a in my late 20s as well. And I started realizing, so now we're going to talk about, creating the environment of the wellness lifestyle, right? Which is also a part of the responsibility. And, I cut out eating certain things. I cut out having certain conversations. I cut out creating a vocabulary of speaking life to me, to my soul. That's all a part of the responsibility in creating a life of wellness. My home, where I lived at the time, I created an environment of wellness. I started working out more. At that time, I was what they call like a gym rat. I would be in the gym for at least 2 hours, 5 days a week. But that's what I needed at that particular time. You have to move physically and continually release all of that negative built up energy. Okay? So, this is what I'm talking about. I now want to shift into what I was talking about concerning when a mother does not deal with trauma in her childhood. And I'm relating this to my mother. And I will be doing the same thing as a man. When I'm talking about a man, not as a man, because I am not a man. But when a woman does not deal with the traveling trauma and the pain from her life, and she projects that onto her child or her children, she is then projecting or provoking that child or those children to anger. Because what I found, a lot of my anger was towards my mother. Because I was like, how can you continually allow this person to do what they are doing to us? That's my dog. But she never checked her own traveling trauma. And so that's what happens. And then, Marvelous, enough. And then so when it comes to a man, when they haven't, or specifically my dad, when he didn't check his, he then provoked onto the children a spirit of rejection, because you're supposed to be the protector. and you're not protecting the family unit. And so now the child or the children are feeling rejected. So that needs to be said. All right, so I want to talk now, because I am an herbalist, so I definitely want to talk about the wellness part, as far as things that you can start to um, eat, not eat. There is a great man, or was a great man. His name is Dr. Sebi, and let me say this really quick before I introduce something that he created back in the 60s. I saw yesterday, and it may have happened prior to yesterday, but I saw yesterday that one of his sons just got sentenced to 155 years in prison for revealing gatekeeping secrets of health. And that's all I'm going to say. So, eating and rhythm. This is something that Dr. Sebi came up with. And it really, and I spoke a little bit before about rhythm, how everything in life, right, is to a rhythm. So even in eating, he broke down eating in laws of rhythm. This is something that you can download for yourself. So from 5 a.m. to 12 noon, we should be consuming fruits, herbs, and water to help the body flush and cleanse out toxins. From 12 p.m. to 3 p.m., vegetables at noon to replenish the cells, feed the body minerals, and of course, water. And then from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., that's when you're consuming more of your solids. Um, Foods can be eaten, but no more eating after 8 p.m. So what do those solids look like? Your grains, like your quinoa, things like that. Your poultry, your fish, your turkey, your chicken, and if you consume a red meat, then you consume your red meat as well, pork as well. And then the last thing I want to talk to you guys, well, not the last thing, but also make sure that you are consuming, what am I going to say? A minimum of 2 tablespoons of any type of sea moss gel, which you can order from me on my website, which is homegrownwellnessfba.company.site. Because we are made up of, our bodies made up of minerals, right, from the earth, right? We're not synthetics, we are real. Vitamins are synthetics. And so the body needs 102 different minerals on a daily basis. And with just 2 tablespoons of any type of sea moss gel, you will get 92 of the 102 different minerals. So you need that. And I make a tea and a tincture coupled with 3 other different herbs, and that will bring you to your 102 minerals as well. So it's a little FYI. But I want to talk about, and we're in the responsibility. This is all the responsibility part in creating the wellness, right? So this part of the wellness, we're talking about what we need to be consuming or not consuming. So clothes. This is something that a lot of us have in our homes. So I'm going to be talking about clothes and the great benefits of clothes as well. One, they are packed with minerals. They are great for being an anti-inflammatory. They have great antiseptic properties. Hence, we already know antiseptic properties. We already know where we're going with that. Hence, they are great for oral health. I personally make a clove mouthwash, and that's what I use, and I do prepare it. So you can order yourself a 32-ounce jar from me as well. Cloves improve your digestion, or help improve your digestion, and if you add them to your diet, they become like an anti-stress reliever, basically destroying inflammation in the body. Okay, because when things are inflamed in the body becomes stressed. So adding cloves, to foods, like I know, I mean, I personally don't consume pork, but I remember growing up in a southern household. My mom was a Geechee, a Gullah Geechee. She would cook the cloves and put it in the ham, and it would just make it taste a lot better. But what she didn't know, because I know she didn't know, at the time, is that the cloves were literally destroying the toxins that was in the pork meat. And that's a great thing about our people, is that we were doing things that combated toxins. And that's why a lot of the folk that grew up in the South and raised their own hogs and things like that, um, they didn't have the high cholesterol and the diabetes and all of that, because they cooked with these great herbs that remove the toxins from specific things. So listen, that is it for today. I will be back on to not tomorrow. I will be back on this Sunday coming up, which is I can't see that far, which will be the 14th at 9 p.m. I will be going live this Sunday at 9 p.m. Hopefully everything will go all right. I won't have any issues. I hope this helped you all, because it definitely helped me. And remember, be great to yourself, because you are great. Be great to your family. Be great to your community. Without love, self-love, we have absolutely nothing. And as always, clarity is key. But without consistency, we have no balance. Family, be well.